Hi everybody, Jake here for FMSCOUT, and in today's video we're going to be covering a topic which in my opinion is just as important as transfers and tactics to your team being in winning form and performing well in whatever competition your side may be in. This area of the game is something that a lot of Football Manager players neglect. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced player, hopefully you'll get some use out of this video. So that being said, let's get right into it. Hello everyone, Jake here for FMSCOUT, and as I mentioned in that intro, today we're going to be covering something which in my opinion is just as important as tactics and transfers, and that is dynamics. We're going to be looking at not only how to have good dynamics and how they can affect you in the game, but also how to avoid ever having issues in that area, ways that you can keep on top and manage your squad's happiness. And I can tell you from experience that this is such a key thing in Football Manager, and so many people that I know neglect it, and it just has negative effects all around for their sides without them realising. But before we get into it, I just want to ask you guys, if you do enjoy this video, hit the like button. It really does help in sharing it out to as many people as possible. If anyone does that, you're an absolute legend. Feel free to comment down below your tips on how to manage happiness and dynamics in your side, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also, you might see we're using a Newcastle save here. This is a save that I have going on my own channel, which you can find linked in the description. If you want to come over, check it out, maybe hit the subscribe button. I would not say no, I'd be very happy with that. But yeah, without further ado, no more plugging, let's get right into it. So here we are with Newcastle. Now my team has been doing very well in the league. Yes, we have a fairly decent squad, but we're also in a Champions League final coming up, which will be the next episode of the series for anyone that's interested. And we are definitely overperforming, I would say, for the squad that we have compared to some of the other teams, not just in the Premier League, but in world football. And I think a lot of that comes down to how good our dynamics have been. To anyone who doesn't know, dynamics are all about the feelings that players have and how they can affect your team. If you want to learn a little bit more about them and where we're going to spend the majority of this video, you want to hit the dynamics button up here and you get this page. Now, as you can see, we're doing pretty well in all areas, although club atmosphere is down, and I'll talk about that in the video later on how we could have avoided that, because that has caused us a few issues on the pitch and off the pitch as well. So we're going to discuss each of the areas and how to avoid problems from arising and hopefully keep your team playing at the highest level. So the two easiest ones on this page to look after are managerial support and team cohesion. Managerial support just tends to be if you're doing well, and this is the main way that it'll go up. If you are doing well with your team and you've had some players around a club for a while, usually the ones that are your players, the ones that you maybe bought in, this usually helps with having good managerial support, but I've very rarely seen, unless you're in a really tough run of form, this drop low. Like, if you are in that situation, chances are you're probably failing in many other areas of the club, which is causing the managerial support to be so low. Team cohesion is similar, and that just comes fairly naturally. Usually it will only go down if you buy basically a whole new starting 11, and that often, alongside fitness, is why you will find at the start of a season, as you're using a new tactic, for example, after you've just had a transfer window, some of the players might not start playing too well straight away. It's because they need to gel into the team just like they would in real life, and once they do and your team cohesion is good and the players learn how to play with each other, then your mental state has gone up. That will improve player positioning during matches, and it will also improve apparently their vision and reactions to events unfolding when playing. I didn't know that, but there you go, that's something else that it will affect. So basically it will just help your team play better on the pitch, which is awesome. But club atmosphere is probably the hardest one to keep at a good level, although there are many ways you can monitor and look after your club atmosphere. Most of the time, this will be in a good state alongside your others if your team is playing well. However, if you have unhappy players, disgruntled players off the pitch, this will cause it to go down. We have 3 players here in our team, all of which are currently unhappy or at least concerned, all of which to varying levels of importance to the team as well, and that will affect things. Now, as I mentioned early on, this is causing us a few problems, and club atmosphere is so important to how your team performs on the pitch. Now, there's a fair few players that won't even come onto this screen, but for the people that do, there's even more that then won't go onto the happiness section, which I think is way more important than anything here, even the overview. Now, you could argue, looking at my team's overall happiness here, that I'm probably not doing everything that I'm telling you guys to do in this video. I'm doing it most of the time, but you know, sometimes you make a slip up, it will happen. But this section is so important. Not only does it allow you to see how happy your players are, but it allows you to ever stop unhappiness, to keep an eye on when players are struggling and to find ways to fix it very easily. The happiness section will be split up based on who is of importance to your team. So as you can see, our team leaders here, Livakovic and Ward-Prowse, have the biggest effect on the squad if they aren't happy. Now, one thing to notice straight away, Livakovic, very happy, he plays pretty much every game in goal, but James Ward-Prowse is starting, and it's not a big deal yet, but he's starting to get a concern and be dissatisfied. He's still delighted overall, However, if we let something sit for too long, it can develop and become a mess of issue, as it is with Saint-Maximin here, who now wants to leave the club even though he starts fairly regularly for us, and we'll talk about why. But on this section, it will show you how you can avoid these issues. For example, James Ward-Prowse is slightly dissatisfied at his club situation and is starting to feel like he deserves a new contract. Ward-Prowse has been playing amazing. This is up to you, obviously, in your saves, but for me, I would look at this and go, you know what, I should start thinking about giving him a new deal and ever preventing him from becoming unhappy. Basuma was a key player for us in our first season at Newcastle here, but after the signing of a couple of players, he slipped down to be a fairly regular starter, but not a key player in our side. Now this has led to him being slightly unhappy because obviously when we signed him we told him he was going to be playing a certain amount. We're not doing it now. He is concerned about his playing time, and again you can look to rectify this in your saves, but for me here I'm okay with that for Basuma. Even though he's highly influential, I know that the chances are he might not be around the club for too much longer, and I think when he does get upset I can just play him at that point and I'll take that. I don't mind it too much as long as the whole club isn't in complete disarray from it, which I think we will be fine with. So we've looked at a happy player and how we can keep him happy. We've looked at a slightly unhappy player and how we could rectify that if we wanted to, i.e. give him the playing time that he's after. It shows us here that that's what he wants, and soon this could turn into a devastated Saint-Maximin. But now it's time to look at the devastated kind of player that you can get in your dynamics. In this case, we've got Maximin, and because of me basically not treating him the way he wants and not looking after him to the best of my ability by looking on this page, he now wants to leave the club, which could be a huge loss for the side, and we'll talk about what's happened with him. So, club situation, he's asking to leave, and that is because of his playing time. Now, I actually failed a promise, I believe, with Maximin, which is one of the worst things you can do in Football Manager for dynamics' sake. If you fail a promise, sometimes it's so hard to come back from that with a player. Now, if every 2 weeks or so you do come onto a player and check if they're concerned and that kind of thing, you can mostly avoid promises by weeding out the unhappiness before it leads to a situation where they have to come to you and ask for something. Sometimes you can let the captain deal with it. Most of the time, you'll have to deal with it yourself, and if you can avoid making a promise, then do so. But if you have made promises, you can check in this section here to see how well you're doing on that promise, if you succeeded or failed. In this case, there was a small promise I made to Ward-Prowse, I'd rest him. I forgot to do so. It hasn't really caused too much of an issue. Then we've got Basuma, who wants us to challenge for the Premier League title. Being 3 points behind the leaders with 3 games to go, I think he'll be fine with that. I don't see why he wouldn't be. Akanji, we have a promise to qualify for continental football, so all is good, but sometimes you might have one that you'll forget about where you've promised Billy Gilmore to play in the box-to-box role, let's say, and you need to keep an eye on that, and if you realise that you might be about to fail that promise, this screen will let you know and you can rectify it before Billy Gilmore decides, hand in transfer request. Because once you break a promise, it's so hard to come back from, and I think, if I remember right, that's what I had with Saint-Maximin. He is a star player, because that's what he is at Newcastle when you start pretty much. Since then, we've gone and signed many other players that can compete in his position. Rafinha, Marcus Thuram, Marcus Edwards, we've got plenty of players competing for them wing spots, and naturally, that means Saint-Maximin doesn't start every single game. If I came to check this section more regularly, I could have avoided this situation where he wants to leave, because I could have seen, like with Basuma, that he wanted to start more games, and I could have fixed that quite easily by playing him in a run of games, getting his happiness back up, and all is well. But obviously, because I've missed that, he is now devastated, he wants to leave, and even worse, he's got players in the squad backing him, which are then making them players not like being at the club so much. For example, his international teammates Thuram, Mukiel are supporting him, and that has meant that they've gone from being delighted and happy at the club to content, and that has led to them performing worse in the match engine, basically. You can see the direct effects of it so easily in Football Manager, and you need to try and keep on top of it. So we've looked at the benefits of dynamics, we've looked at how to avoid issues with dynamics, but what about some quick simple fixes to help improve a player's morale or situation? Now this won't always work, and it is obviously a case by case basis, but one thing that worked in FM21 every single time, for me at least, and I haven't tried it in FM22 yet, but I'm going to imagine it will still do the same job, is to come to the discuss section on a player, hit praise, and then praise conduct. Now, praising in general is a great thing to do in Football Manager because you want to make a player have a good relationship with you. Whether it's an international cap, a goal, or a good performance, it's always worth praising a player, and that's great. Or if they do well in training, you'll get them little training reports where you can praise them, and then similarly, if they are bad at training, you tell them so, and most of the time they'll be fine with that and they'll say, yeah, I'll hold my hands up, I'll do better in training. One thing you can do to quickly boost morale is the praise conduct button, which I was just about to discuss. All you need to do there is, I heard you wanted to talk, let's go. As long as he hasn't been being a complete idiot around the club, all you want to do is basically that I think you've been doing well at the club. He'll take that. Sometimes it will raise their morale a tiny bit, sometimes it won't do enough. With Basuma here, it hasn't done enough to take him up anything. But if we go to, I don't know, Livakovic, he isn't perfect, he's just exceptional. What if we discuss with him? praise player, praise conduct. Like I say, it never really goes wrong, but it doesn't always fail. And there you go with Livakovic's morale. He's gone from this to this, which is perfect. Now he has perfect morale, and that'll mean he'll be playing at the top of his game dynamics wise. So if you have a big game coming up like a Champions League final, you can do that to the whole squad and just give yourself that little bit of an edge. It might only be a 5-10% shift, but it can really help in helping your side perform. Now, to finish up the video, we'll talk about one other thing, and kind of the opposite of what we just looked at. And I think nowhere near enough people do this, and that is to go to a player, let's say Julian Weigl. If I wasn't happy with his performance, you need to be criticising your players. It is very important to do so. Just as praising can raise their morale and make them feel great, you need to also criticise them after a bad performance, because it will kick them up a gear sometimes. Now, you do have to be very careful with this. You need to set your own boundaries as what you consider a bad performance. For me, if a player gets 6.6 in a game, average match rating, I'll say, okay, if it's anything less than that, 6.5, I'll criticise their performance in that match just by going discuss, warn player, criticise. Then if it's an 8.4 or an 8.3, usually I'll criticise him and give him a warning of a fine. And if it's a real terrible performance, like a 6.2 or below, I'll probably fine them a week's wages. Not only does that save you a little bit on the budget, but also it makes a player know that, I need to reach a high level if I want to get paid. But I will say, do everything else before you do that. That should be the last thing you do as you start to understand dynamics more. Then you can start to figure out when is the right time to criticise a player, because if you get it wrong, it can obviously have massive negative effects if you fine a player for what he considers to be a good performance. So it's all about looking after your team, keeping an eye on the dynamics section and getting to know your players and the club and what your levels are and what you're trying to achieve. If a player is doing great, praise him. Keep an eye on him, give him the contract he deserves, don't let his happiness fall below. If it's a player that hasn't been playing so great, criticise him, fine him if it needs to be. If he's not training well, have a go at him. It will help overall, and that will hopefully lead you to winning more games. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy the video, hopefully you learned something, or at least if you knew about all this, maybe you'll consider it a little bit more now. Thank you to anyone who did watch. If you did enjoy it, like the video, comment down below what you thought, and subscribe to see more content like this, and feel free to check out my Newcastle save on my channel if you want to learn a little bit more about the team and how we're doing. Big Champions League final on the horizon. But yeah, have a great day everyone. Hopefully I'll see you next time, and goodbye.